welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today we're going to be carrying on from last week, and we are going to be looking at what is new with classes in Wrath of the Lich King, and that have ultimately been changed in Wrath pre-patch already. So we looked at the Druids, Paladins, and I've already forgotten. Oh my god, my brain is not what it used to be. Paladins, Druids, and Mage last week. This week we're going to be looking at Warrior, Warlock, and Shaman. And then we'll look at the rest of the classes in the following week. But as always, we will start off with the weekly news for retail. We have the world bosses for this week are Valinor, Morgeth, and Antros. Antros and the Sepulchre of the first ones being the fated raid for this week. Make sure you head on over there, get your items, do the raid this week, get your item level up, really push it. So, makes it nice and easy to be in Zereth Mortis right now, essentially. Burning Crusade Time Walking is your time walking of choice. It's not necessarily the most exciting one, as we have just come out of Burning Crusade into Wrath pre-patch, but if you want something in terms of amount from your time walking badges, or you just want your 500 time walking badges, it is worth doing that one dungeon to get them, and save up for something else, maybe a Warlords of Draenor mount, Legion mount, etc. The brawl for this week is Packed House. This one is very simple. It is like a 15 versus 15, all in one small arena, and it is whoever can kill every single member of the opposing team first. So very simple, very quick, and it's always good to be a ranged class in this arena, I will say, this brawl. The Mythic Plus affixes for this week are Inspiring, Grievous, Fortified, and Shrouded. Inspiring, there is a mob that basically is giant and glowing golden. You either CC this mob or kill it fast, as it prevents CC on the other mobs, including counter spells and kicks and stuff like that on any mobs within 10 yards or something. So deal with the Inspiring mob very quickly or CC it. Grievous is also the second affix for this week. Grievous is when you go below 90%, you take a debuff onto your character, and this continuously stacks until you go above 90% HP. So make sure you help your healer out, or just avoid damaging mechanics. Fortified is the third mythic affix, and this is every single mob that isn't a boss or spawned by the boss is a bit tankier and deals more damage. So make sure you take a bit of a more AoE approach, or make sure you're popping cooldowns on the mob packs rather than bosses. And finally, you have Shrouded, the Season 4 affix, where there is a Nathrezim in the ranks. If you find that Nathrezim, then you can get certain buffs, and there are multiple Nathrazims, so you can get up to about 30% increase on a secondary buff, such as Mastery, Haste, etc. And the spell that we're going to be looking at, the history of, is Vampiric Embrace. Now, I didn't think this would have much of a history, but I've seen that it has changed from TBC to Wrath, so I thought, what else has changed about it? Well, I brought up the webpage that I have in front of me, and a lot has changed about it, to say the least. I didn't think it had this many changes. But let's start off with Classic. So in patch 1.4, an icon or active icon tooltip rewritten to be more clear, very simple. 1.6 health leech effects no longer give you health while you're a ghost. Seems very stupid and silly, but it's more of a bug. And in 1.7, it guys, made a big change. And now has 20% of the damage actually caused, including critical hits, buffs, etc., but now only heals when shadow spells cause damage. So, before this, it was all spells. You could smite and be healing yourself. That's kind of cool. Or even wand. Then it got a small change in patch 1.10. Damage resisted by the target will no longer be counted as damage caused for the purposes of healing from this ability, which makes sense. You've done no damage if they resist, so you get no healing from it. A small change 3 months later, this ability will no longer heal for damage caused when the target had no life remaining. Bit annoying because if they have 100 health and you deal 800 with your Mind Blast, it will only heal for 20. Because, well, you've technically only done 100 damage to that target before it died. So, 100, 20%, 20. Then we have patch 1.11, so a few months after this as well. Oh no, wait, sorry. That was the last patch of Classic. We now move into patch 2.0, so this is Burning Crusade. This is several months later. Vampiric Embrace is now considered a magic effect instead of a curse effect. So you could dispel it as a curse, but now you can dispel it as a magic. Then a few months after this, the base healing percent from Vampiric Embrace has been reduced to 15, down from 20%. In addition, healing done can no longer be a critical effect, which is a bit of a shame. It basically got nerfed all around, but it is what it is. In Wrath, it got a massive change. This is over a year later. Vampiric Embrace now heals party members for 3%, down from 15%. This might sound awful. This might sound like an absolutely awful transition and change, but healing from down from 15%. Healing for the casting priest remains at 15%, so it's more of a personal buff for you. And also, mana cost of the spell has been removed a few months later, as well as the duration increased to 5 minutes, up from 1 minute. In the PvP, duration remains 60 seconds. So this is something that you could just apply onto a full boss fight and get massive use out of it in Wrath of the Lich King, compared to, say, it was a 10-second debuff, I think, in Classic. Then you had to time it, and even then in Classic, it took up a debuff slot, so you didn't necessarily want to have it on the boss because you only had 16 debuffs that you were allowed. So basically, yeah, it wasn't necessarily the most useful of cooldowns at the time. But in Wrath, that changed, and it made it a very potent ability to have up constantly on bosses. In patch 3.3, the last patch of Wrath of the Lich King, several months after this change, this ability now provides a 30-minute buff that cannot be dispelled instead of a target debuff. So you buffed yourself with it for 30 minutes, and this was its strongest stage, in my opinion. This is when it became very, very good for all of Wrath, essentially. Or not all of Wrath. It will be good for all of Wrath when Wrath Classic comes out, because we are starting on patch 3.3. So you'll have this for over a year, this Vampiric Embrace, and it will be a very potent and very good constant healing effect for you. In patch 4.0 was the next change, so in Cataclysm, a year later, the healing to the caster has been reduced to 6%, down from 12%. There was a tooltip error which stated that the self-healing amount was 15, and the healing to the party is still 3%. So there was a small hotfix somewhere that isn't recorded on here, but it went down from 15 to 12% before that, and they just didn't change the tooltip of it. A couple months later, now lasts until cancelled or death. Previous duration was 30 minutes. This is kind of like Righteous Fury is in Wrath of the Lich King now for Paladins. It's instead of a 30-minute buff, just on you forever, so that's really good. Next change came over a year and a half later in Mists of Pandaria. Vampiric Embrace is now a baseline ability for Shadow Priests and has been redesigned. Basically, the previous talent, it fills you with Embrace of Shadow Energy, causing you to be healed for 6% to any single target damage you deal, lasts until cancelled. So basically, we don't get to know what it was in terms of how it's been redesigned. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be somewhere around the Classic era mark, where it's on a target for 10 seconds or on you for 10 seconds, and it will convert healing into convert damage into healing for yourself. A few months or a year again after this, healing is now capped at 15 raid members, up from 6. When used in 25-man instances, kind of makes sense. It could have kept these 6 when you're in 10-man instances and just healed the lowest target, but it kind of makes sense a bit, as this is still when 25 raiding and 10 man were the only raid sources. You couldn't fluctuate between anything like that. There was a small hotfix for it. The day after that, Vampiric Embrace should now split healing amongst multiple allies targeted by the proper amount. And again, another hotfix a few months later to address the issues with input lag. Vampiric Embrace now heals every second instead of every time the priest deals shadow damage. Total amount healed remains unchanged. So is this just is this just a healing over time effect now, essentially, what they wanted to do? Seems weird. Not sure about that. In Warlords of Draenor, it got its next change. So a year after that little hotfix, it now heals all party and raid members for 10% of the damage done. And this healing is no longer split between targets. Previously healed 75% of the damage done, split between targets. Okay, so that's what it was in Mists of Pandaria. But I think the 10% of damage done is just better because you get more use out of it. Overall, if your raid is taking a lot of raid damage, it is very useful to have this extra 10% healing come out of the Shadow Priest. A full 2 years after this change in Warlords of Draenor, it got changed in Legion. So Vampiric Embrace now heals 40% of all single target shadow damage done, up from 10%, but can only heal one target. So this is very much a defensive for the priest, or, sort of based around arenas, potentially. This is a very healthy change for arenas and gives the priest another defensive ability in PvP. And finally, a year or 2 years after that Legion change, it was changed in Battle for Azeroth for the final time. Vampiric Embrace is now affected by the global cooldown. Its healing done is now 85%, up from 40%, and its cooldown is reduced to 2 minutes, down from 3 minutes, and it's now available at level 28, down from 70. So it became a massive defensive cooldown in terms of PvP for the Shadow Priest, but in terms of raid uses, it isn't as potent as it once was back in Wrath of the Lich King or Cataclysm, stuff like that. Especially in Wrath of the Lich King, when it was just a 30-minute buff on yourself. That is going to be very powerful, I think, to have a Shadow Priest in your raid, as well as like a Ret Paladin or a Holy Paladin, something like that. Because Judgment of Light is also very powerful, and these constant heals are not to be neglected in Wrath of the Lich King raiding. They are very powerful, and they help out your healer a bunch. But that is it for this week in terms of what spell we're looking at. I thought I was ending the podcast there for a second. My brain just didn't quite catch up. Sorry about that. So let's get into the meat and bones of the podcast. We're going to be looking at Shaman first and seeing what Shamans get and, what changes with them. Essentially, I'm going to be looking at the big stuff rather than the smaller, smaller things that have changed. Keep it more punctual, keep it, quicker in terms of the episode. But for Elemental Shamans, we have a couple new things. Lava Burst is not in the game yet, but a lot of Elemental Shaman cooldowns or talents revolve around Lava Burst and dealing more critical damage with your Lava Burst and your Flame Shock. This is sort of what retail looks like now, where you want to keep your Flame Shock constantly up and you get Lava Burst procs. I'm not sure if you can get procs in Wrath, but I'm pretty sure you can get very chunky Lava Burst, and this is where this will come from. So Lava Flows is just an increase to your Lava Burst and your Flame Shock damage. Astral Shift is one of the big ones for PvPers. So when stunned, feared, or silenced, you shift into an astral plane, reducing all damage taken by 30% for the duration of the stun, fear, or silence. I do want to point out that I will be talking about the talents as if they're maxed out. So it is 10% per point, but there's 3 points that you can get into this, so 30%. So this is just a straight up 30% damage reduction in PvP whenever you're CC'd. How crazy is that? Every single CC, pretty much. Apart from Polymorph, but again, you can't be killed in a Polymorph. They'll break the Polymorph and you either get to run or they'll stun you out of the Polymorph, in which case Astral Shift will proc. There's a lot to... You get so much use out of this. It is unreal. Totem of Wrath has also been changed. It used to do 3% critical strike chance for spells. Now, summons a totem of wrath at the feet of the caster. The totem increases spell power by 100 for all party and raid members, and increased the critical strike chance of all attacks by 3% against enemies within 40 yards. So it still has that 3% element, but it also just increases the damage, the spell damage of all casters within your party or raid, which is very good and a very nice change. We also have the big one, which is Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm in PvP is very good. For PvE, it's a very good mana restoration, as you can get 8% of your base mana every 45 seconds. So what it does, you call down a bolt of lightning, energizing you and damaging nearby enemies within 10 yards, restoring 8% of your mana and dealing a certain amount of nature damage to all nearby enemies, knocking them back 20 yards, and you can use this while stunned. 20-yard knockback is insanely good. It is insanely good, and it is something not to be scoffed at. A lot of people in PvE content get annoyed at this, but a lot of people in PvE need to realise that knockbacks are going to be in Wrath. They will be in Wrath, and they will be useful, and they are useful for damage purposes, for mana restoration, for even rotation, like mages for Blast Wave. Like, they get a free flame strike out of it, but they need to hit targets. So that means them targets will get knocked back. And Typhoon is just good because it dazes, it can knock them away from tanks, and like etc. It deals a fair amount of damage. So people in Wrath need to understand that knockbacks are going to be part of the game and part baseline of the game now. And I've gone into raids and stuff where people have been complaining about knockbacks already. And this isn't tanks complaining about it. I get tanks complaining about it and melee, but the melee, ultimately, there was one enhanced shaman that complained about it because it moved him from his totems. Let's face it, the totems aren't doing much of the AoE damage anyway, but we had a warrior sticking up for us as well, saying like it really doesn't matter, like you have to move 10 feet. But a lot of the hate came from other casters. Casters who are so lazy because all they want to do is press Blizzard and Hurricane in one spot and not do anything else in AFK. You can move your Hurricane and Blizzard 5 feet back. It's not tough. Or predict it. Predict that someone's going to use a knockback and put your like AoE circle or targeting just slightly behind where the pack is standing. That way you're still hitting them, but if someone does knock them back, they're still going to be in your AoE. It's really not that tough, and people need to understand that this is in the game now, and this will have an impact. You cannot tell people to not use their abilities. They want to press their abilities, you let them press their abilities. It's their game, they are paying for it, you have to let them press their abilities. You cannot dictate what they want to press. Now, I understand in sort of raid situations it's not good to do this, but in the raid situation that I was using my Typhoon, the mobs were 10%, below 10%, and it's just an instant cast rather than spending 2k mana on a Hurricane. It's very simple, and it's, you know, mana efficient, as well as getting more damage out still. So, you can use it in good situations, but you need to understand that this is part of the game now. And people who complain about this need to understand that. It's one of them things. Alright, sorry for the little rant. So, enhancement shamans. They obviously had shamanistic rage before, but what they get now is a lot more damage to their shocks and stuff. But the big one, the real big one, is Feral Spirit. Summon 2 Spirit Wolves under the command of the shaman, lasting 45 seconds, 3-minute cooldown. These wolves hurt. They hurt a lot. They can be affected by heroism, buffs, whatever. They're very cool, and they make you very, very, powerful. You see a shaman with this running at you, you better run, because they get buffs with the Spirit Wolf. So the Spirit Wolf can give a speed buff, I'm pretty sure, called Spirit Walker, or not Spirit Walker, Spirit Walk, Spirit Run, something like that. And it basically increases their movement speed by 60%, so they are bolting it at you, and you want to just run. You don't want to, try anything. That's the main difference for enhancement. There's still very much, you like your Wind Furies, you'd like your melee DPS and stuff like that. It's very simple. but very fun still. Restoration obviously got a massive spell in Riptide. Basically, your instant cast spell on a 6-second cooldown, it heals a friendly target for a certain amount, and another certain amount of healing over 15 seconds. Your next chain heal cast on that primary target within 15 seconds will consume the healing over time effect and increase the amount of the chain heal by 25%. So this is a buff to buff your bigger heals and stuff. Essentially, this is a very good sort of I'll mend you up for a second while I get to casting kind of heal. It's not as potent as it is in retail, but it is still a very good heal, and it increases the healing done by chain heals and stuff for a big amount. And this means that you can get more AoE healing out overall as well. Another change in the restoration tree is Ancestral Awakening. When you critically heal with your Healing Wave, Lesser Healing Wave, or Riptide, you summon an Ancestral Spirit to aid you, instantly healing the lowest percentage health player or in the raid or party within 40 yards for 10% of the amount healed. This is very good. Crit is very huge for healers. Paladins need it for mana regen, but now shamans will need crit to get this Ancestral Awakening. It's a very nice tool to have. Again, it's just some passive healing, which cannot be overstated how good it is in Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, if you heal, we're going to be healing like 5k-ish. I'm guessing 5k to 10k, who knows, at the end game of Wrath of the Lich King. If you're healing 10k maximum, you're healing someone for 1000 damage with this if you crit. It's going to be potent, and it will add up over the course of a raid fight, over the course of an arena and stuff like that. So it is very good and very, very potent. But moving on to warriors, I do want to start with protection here, because I tried out Protection Warrior in TBC and I just couldn't hack it. It wasn't as enjoyable as I thought it would be in terms of tab targeting, trying to keep targets on top of me. But in Wrath, warrior tanks are good at the moment. Paladin tanks will succeed them once again going into endgame content of Wrath, but that is mainly because Paladin tanks do not have what they're not at their full potential in TBC pre-patch at the moment, because they get Holy Shield later on at like level 75, and that is a massive threat generation. But for warriors, it's huge. So first change you get is Vigilance. You focus your protective gaze on a group or raid target, reducing their damage taken by 3%, and transfers 10% of the threat they cause to you. In addition, each time they are hit by an attacker, your Taunt cooldown is refreshed. This lasts for 30 minutes, and you can only put this on one person at a time. Imagine having a constant taunt. Imagine you get one target that is constantly being hit. You could put this on another tank, essentially, and basically they will always be getting hit if they're off tanking something, so you can get taunts constantly for a ad fight. So 10 ads spawn, and if you've got a fast hitting mob on your other tank, you can essentially pick all of them up within maybe 3 seconds, because taunt isn't on a global cooldown. So you can pick everything up, you can tab target, taunt everything because it's resetting taunt, and it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane, and it's great to have a buff as a warrior, apart from Battle Shout. The next one is Warbringer. This is huge. Your charge, intercept, and intervene abilities are now usable while in combat and in any stance. In addition, your intervene ability will remove all movement impairing effects. If you're rooted, intervene to a target to get out. You can charge a target mid-combat. You can chain pull with warriors now by using the charges and stuff. It is very good. It's such a quality of life, and it is amazing. Then, going all the way down to the bottom, Shockwave. A frontal cone that stuns everything within 10 yards for 4 seconds. A 4-second stun on a 20-second cooldown. That is one of the best cooldowns in the game, in my opinion, without a doubt, actually. Without a doubt, it's one of the best cooldowns in a game. I think even Kidney Shot, you need, is a longer cooldown or something around the same. It might be 20 seconds, but this is just even better because Kidney Shot requires combo points. This you can just press for 15 rage, and rage is not an issue for prop paladin or prop warriors anymore. It is very, very good. Fury, we're looking at Rampage just being a buff now, a party and raid buff, quite like Boomkin Aura or the new Death Knight auras and stuff. Basically increases the range and melee crit chance to you and all party and raid members by 5%. Very nice. Heroic Fury removes any immobilizing effect and refreshes the cooldown of your intercept. This is on a 45-second cooldown, so you can intercept. Then you can... essentially what you can do is intercept, wait for the cooldown of your intercept, and then intercept again, press Heroic Fury, and get it again. So you can get 3 within like 30 seconds. It's very, very good. The big one for Fury, though, Fury isn't as potent as it was in TBC. I'm pretty sure you go sort of half and half arms, half Fury in TBC. But Fury has a very nice element to it where you get Titan's Grip. It allows you to equip two-handed axes, maces, and swords in one hand. While you have a two-handed weapon equipped in one hand, your physical damage done is reduced by 10%. So the physical damage done is a bit shit, but it's very cool to just have two massive weapons in one hand, especially if you're a gnome. This is kind of what I like about Fury. It might not be the most DPS intensive spec, but it's quite fun to just wield that. It is very fun. Moving on to Arms. Arms gets one big thing. Also, Juggernaut is very good. It allows your charge to be used in combat, but the cooldown of charge is increased by 5 seconds. And following a charge, your next slam or mortal strike has a 25% chance increase to critically hit within 10 seconds. But the big thing, Blade Storm. This is what warriors have been dreaming of since Classic. Instantly whirlwind up to 4 nearby enemies for the next 6 seconds. You'll perform a whirlwind attack every 1 second. While under the effects of Blade Storm, you cannot move, or you can move but cannot perform any other abilities. You do not feel pity or remorse or fear, and you cannot be stopped unless killed. Well, you can be stopped because you can be disarmed, but that reduces the damage done by your Blade Storm, essentially. But it is very fun to press. It is very potent at the moment, and it is very powerful. This is the main sort of change for Arms and Fury and Prot. Nothing too serious, but you get a lot of quality of life stuff with the extra charges, charging in combat, etc. So it's very, very good, and Prot is now very, very potent. Moving on to our last class, we have Warlocks. So Warlocks are annoying in PvP, we will say this. So we'll start off with Destruction. Shadow Fury has now been changed. It is an instant cast rather than a 1.5 or something. And it still works the same. It is a 3-second stun on a 20-second cooldown. Backdraft is one of a very powerful talents. When you cast Conflagrate, the cast time and global cooldown of your next 3 non-channeled destruction spells is reduced by 10%, or 30%, sorry. And this is huge because you're casting 30% faster, which is absolutely insane. It's very potent, you really do feel it. After you use Conflagrate, you kind of want to use Chaos Bolt, etc. And I just brought it up there, Chaos Bolt. Sends a bolt of chaotic fire at the enemy, dealing a certain amount of fire damage. Chaos Bolt cannot be resisted and pierces through all absorption effects. It is a 12-second cooldown, but if you come up against a priest and you're pressing Chaos Bolt and they want to shield, they press shield on someone who's 10%, you press Chaos Bolt, they're still dead. Doesn't care about the shield. That is how powerful it is, and it is very cool to press it. I find it very fun to press it on my little boosted Warlock that I did a couple days ago. The main thing for Demonology Warlocks is a bit weird, but it's also very fun. Metamorphosis. This is basically the Demon Hunter spell, but different. You transform into a demon for 30 seconds. This form increases your armor by 600%, damage by 20%, reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by melee attacks by 6%, and reduce the duration of stun and snare effects by 50%. You gain some unique demon abilities in addition to your normal abilities, and it is a 3-minute cooldown. So, it's weird. It's weird, but it's a very cool weird. There are very distinct things that you would use this for. You can use it in PvP against melee, obviously, but what you can do also is essentially you can have a warlock tank for 30 seconds. If a warlock presses this, you can essentially have a warlock tank because of how tanky their armor is. Now they might get critically hit and crushed and stuff, but I'm pretty sure in Wrath there are some bosses that you need this warlock to be tanking. A demonology warlock. It's kind of like the twins, the twin emperors in Encourage. You needed a warlock to tank the caster with Searing Pain because you couldn't bring both of the mobs together. So essentially, I think it's useful for PvE a very small amount, but PvP it's very fun and it is a quirky ability. For Affliction, this is where Affliction just got good, essentially. So you have Pandemic. Grants the periodic damage from your corruption and unstable affliction spells critically hit for 100% increased damage and increase the critical strike damage bonus of your haunt by 100%. Dots hurt. Damage over time effects hurt from Shadow Priest right now, from Warlocks, all hurts, and it is all very scary. The big one is Haunt, though, for Warlocks. You send a ghostly soul into the target, dealing a certain amount of shadow damage, and increasing all damage done by your shadow damage over time effects by 20% for 12 seconds. When Haunt spell ends or is dispelled, soul returns to you, healing for 100% of the damage it did to the target. This is a massive heal. If you've got it on multiple targets, you can get it back every few seconds and stuff. If you've got a melee training you, but you throw out 5 haunts already, one haunt will come back, and then a second later, another haunt, second later, another, etc. So you're constantly getting healed, and the damage will just rot people away. It will absolutely rot them, and it will be amazing. And the damage that I've suffered from damage over time effects on my Boomkin, who has like really high resilience, is insane. It's staggering, essentially. But yeah, it's fun. I'm going to try it on my Warlock very soon. I'm having fun with Chaos Bolt right now. I just need a bit of gear. But it is good fun, in my opinion. But that is it this week. Thank you all very much for listening, as always. Don't forget to check out the Patreon, as there are ad-free podcasts going up there, rather than the advert ones on here. But once again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.